The market never changes. I've seen more markets than I can count. Bull runs that burned through the sky like comets, crashes that left men hollowed like empty shells, and recoveries that made them believe once again that they'd finally figured it out. But after all the years, after all the numbers, all the tickers, all the charts, I can tell you this: the market never changes. The names do. The tools do. The screens are brighter now. The trades faster. The language more complicated. But the heartbeat is the same. The rhythm of fear and greed hasn't aged a day. Every generation comes to the market thinking they're different. They build new theories, new systems, new gods of probability and data. They tell themselves that technology has changed the game, that they've outsmarted history. But history is patient. It watches them celebrate. It watches them predict. And then it reminds them, you can't rewrite human nature. The market is not a place. It's a mirror. And every trader who looks into it sees the same reflection across time. I saw it in 1907. They saw it in 1929. You'll see it again tomorrow. The same eyes widen in greed. The same hands tremble in fear. The same hearts beat faster when the numbers flash green. And every one of them whispers the same sentence under their breath. This time, it's different. It never is. When I was young, I thought the market was a puzzle waiting to be solved. I spent nights staring at the tape until the numbers blurred into meaning, convinced that if I just read it long enough, I'd unlock its code. But the truth was never in the tape. It was in me. The market doesn't hide anything. It exposes everything. It shows you your impatience, your pride, your fear, your need to be right, all at once, all the time. You don't trade prices. You trade yourself. Every decision is a reflection of your inner state. The market just translates it into numbers. And if you can't read your own emotions, you'll never read the market's. That's why I say the market never changes. Because people never do. Every chart is just a portrait of psychology painted in price. The brushstrokes are new, but the hand that paints them is ancient. I've seen the same mistakes repeated like clockwork. Traders overconfident at the top, frozen at the bottom. They all call themselves rational. But there is no rationality under pressure, only the illusion of control. I used to think I could control the market, that if I studied harder, planned better, or reacted faster, I could shape it. But the market doesn't bend. It reflects. And that reflection has no mercy for pride. You can't bully truth. You can only accept it. When the market humbles you, and it will, it's not cruelty. It's education. It's life translated into numbers. I've met men who lost everything trying to outthink human nature. They built models so complex, they forgot the simplicity of fear. They chased certainty like it was salvation, but certainty is just comfort dressed as knowledge, and comfort is the first sign of danger. Every time a man feels safe in the market reminds him he isn't. I remember the faces after every crash, the disbelief, the anger, the shock, as if gravity had betrayed them. But gravity doesn't betray. It only applies. The same rule holds for markets. What rises too far, too fast, always returns to balance. Because balance is the only law that never breaks, and yet every generation forgets. They come in with courage and leave with experience, and if they're lucky, that experience turns into humility. The market has no memory, but men do. The problem is, They remember the gains and forget the lessons. I learned the hard way that profit without awareness is poison. It feeds the ego, not the mind. It blinds you to the fact that luck often wears the mask of skill. I don't believe in luck anymore. I believe in rhythm. The rhythm between patience and preparation. That's the only constant that's ever worked. You see, markets don't crash because of numbers. They crash because of hearts. Hearts that can't handle waiting. Hearts that confuse confidence with truth. Hearts that beat too fast to hear reason whisper. I know that rhythm too well. I've lived it. I've been the fool who thought he was smarter than the crowd, and I've been the man who watched the crowd destroy itself. Now when I look back, I realize that every cycle, every rise and fall, was a reflection of our refusal to learn from the past. We inherit memory, but not wisdom. Each generation insists on paying the same tuition, even though the lesson never changes. Maybe that's the market's true brilliance, its ability to teach the same truth through different faces. The tape may change, the tickers may evolve, but the moral is eternal. Patience outlives every trend. Discipline outperforms every algorithm, and humility survives every crash. That's what I would tell the traders of today, not as advice, but as warning. Because the market doesn't care about your strategy. It cares about your state of mind. If your mind is chaotic, your trades will be too. If your emotions are impatient, your account will reflect it. And if your identity depends on winning, the market will strip it away until you remember who you are without it. The irony is, the more advanced markets become, the more primitive traders act. They have faster data, better tools, deeper analysis, and shorter tempers. They call it no progress, but technology doesn't evolve emotion. Fear still clicks the button, greed still buys the top, and arrogance still holds too long. It's almost poetic, how every generation builds higher towers just to jump from the same height. I sometimes imagine the market as an old teacher, patient, amused, watching each new student walk into the same classroom with the same confidence. They don't listen to history because they think history was written by lesser minds, but history was written by wiser ones. And the market, ever patient, lets them talk. It lets them believe. Then it begins the lesson again. That's why I call it eternal. Not because it lasts forever, but because it always begins anew. The market never changes, because it doesn't need to. We do. I often wonder what traders today would think if they could see the rooms where we once stood. No screens, no colors, no charts dancing across digital walls, just the endless chatter of the ticker tape, a thin paper ribbon carrying both hope and ruin through the air. We watched it like priests reading prophecy, each number a heartbeat, each pause a breath between faith and fear. And though decades have passed, I see the same worship in every new generation, the same hunger disguised as curiosity, the same devotion to prediction, the same blindness to reflection. They call it analysis now. I called it obsession then. But the feeling is the same, the need to be right, the fear of being wrong, the refusal to admit that luck had anything to do with success. They build algorithms, I built systems. They chase data, I chased patterns. But the chase itself, that restless heartbeat, never changed. I see it in their eyes, that flicker of euphoria when a trade moves their way, that tightening jaw when it doesn't. They tell themselves they're logical, but logic fades in motion. The faster the trade, the thinner the patience. They think speed is power. But power isn't how fast you act. It's how long you can wait. When I was young, I thought trading was about precision. Now I know it's about endurance. The longer you can sit in silence, the clearer the truth becomes. But silence doesn't sell courses. Silence doesn't trend on headlines. So every generation forgets it. They fill the quiet with noise, signals, opinions, forecasts, experts, and call it progress. But all they've done is build more ways to avoid listening. You can dress impatience in technology. It's still impatience. And impatience, no matter how sophisticated, always ends the same way. I sometimes imagine sitting beside one of them, a young trader with 10 screens glowing in front of him, his fingers restless on the mouse, his heart pounding as he watches a position tick against him. He would turn to me and say, "Mr. Livermore, what do you think I should do?" And I'd tell him, "Nothing, absolutely nothing." He'd laugh. He'd say, "But I'll lose money." And I'd reply, "No, you'll lose yourself. The money is just the receipt." The hardest lesson to learn is that most actions in the market are unnecessary. But the ego can't stand stillness. It confuses quiet with weakness. It mistakes patience for fear. Yet patience is the only strength the market respects. When you act from emotion, you dance to the crowd's rhythm. When you act from awareness, the crowd dances to yours. The difference is invisible, but it's everything. I used to think wisdom was something you could collect, a trophy you earned after enough victories. But wisdom isn't earned through winning. It's absorbed through suffering. And the market makes sure everyone suffers just enough to grow, if they're willing to see it that way. The tragedy is that most don't. They take the lesson personally. They call it unfair, manipulative, rigged. They leave angry, never realizing that the market was never against them. It was only revealing them. When I lost everything, the market wasn't punishing me. It was exposing how much I had confused identity with success. It forced me to see how fragile confidence becomes when it's built on outcomes. That's why I tell anyone who listens, you can't build peace on profit. You can only build it on perspective. And perspective requires distance, the kind you only gain when you've lost enough to stop defending yourself. I sometimes watch the new traders online. Their words move faster than their thoughts. They celebrate gains they don't understand, mock losses they haven't yet experienced, and speak of the market as if it owes them something. But the market doesn't owe. It offers. And every offer comes with a test. Can you take this gift without losing your humility? Most can't. Because they believe mastery means control, but mastery means surrender. The kind of surrender that keeps your ego small enough for truth to fit inside. When I say the market never changes, I don't mean it repeats the same prices. I mean it repeats the same temptations. Temptation to overtrade, temptation to double down, temptation to chase the feeling of certainty, and worst of all, the temptation to think you've finally outgrown your emotions. No one outgrows emotion. You only learn to notice it faster. I once thought discipline meant resistance, holding the line, forcing restraint. Now I know discipline means recognition, seeing the impulse and smiling before it acts. Every generation must rediscover that smile for themselves. It can't be taught. It can only be lived. You can read every book ever written about trading psychology. But until you've watched your own conviction turn into chaos, it's just words. That's why the market remains undefeated, because it teaches through experience, not advice. It doesn't care how smart you are. It only cares how aware you can become when the world stops making sense. Awareness is the only edge that never decays. I used to call it instinct. Now I call it listening. Because instinct is not magic. It's memory refined by silence. The traders who last aren't the loudest or the luckiest. They're the ones who learn to pause, to breathe, to watch, to wait. That's what the market has been trying to tell us since the beginning, that the most powerful act is often no act at all. There's a strange paradox in every generation. The more information they have, the less they see. Because clarity doesn't come from addition, it comes from reduction. The fewer voices in your head, the louder truth becomes. I sometimes wish I could tell the traders of today this: stop looking for the perfect entry. Start looking for the perfect awareness. Because the chart is never wrong. Only your interpretation is. And interpretation comes from state of mind. If your mind is chaotic, even truth looks like noise. If your mind is calm, even noise starts to look like rhythm. That's why the market feels cruel. It's not cruel. It's reactive. It reflects what you bring to it, magnified by leverage. The best traders don't predict. They reflect with precision. I've seen men call themselves masters of timing. But time doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to rhythm, and rhythm belongs to awareness. That's the hierarchy every trader must learn. I no longer try to beat the market. I try to listen to it the way a sailor listens to the wind. Not to control it, but to move with it when the moment is right. That's what I wish the new generation understood, that success in the market is not about dominating chance. It's about respecting uncertainty. Uncertainty is not the enemy. It's the condition of truth. Because truth is never absolute. It moves, it breathes, it evolves, but its essence never changes, and neither does the market. There's a rhythm in human behavior that no chart can display. It's older than the stock exchange, older than Wall Street itself. It's the rhythm of desire, the eternal swing between fear and greed. Every generation enters the market believing they'll break the cycle. But the cycle doesn't break. It bends, and then begins again. I've watched the same pattern repeat until it felt like déjà vu. A man enters the market humble, curious, cautious. He learns, he grows, he wins. Once, twice, and suddenly he isn't humble anymore. He starts to believe the applause. He begins to mistake probability for destiny. He stops learning and starts predicting. And that's when the market begins its work. It doesn't crush him right away. It lets him rise higher, higher, until his confidence becomes blindness. Then with one small turn, one misstep disguised as opportunity, the same hands that applauded him begin to sell. And the silence that follows is the most expensive sound in the world. I've lived through that silence more than once. It has a texture, heavy, metallic, absolute. It strips you of illusions one by one, until the only thing left is truth. And the truth is always the same. You never lost to the market. You lost to yourself. People call it a crash, but what really collapses is the ego. Prices just make it visible. I've seen men pray to numbers as if decimals could deliver salvation. They draw lines. They name patterns. They speak in tongues of certainty. But beneath all the complexity, they're still just asking the same question every trader has asked since time began. Am I right? That question is the real addiction, not money, not winning, just the need to be right. And that need is the trap. Because the market doesn't reward correctness. It rewards awareness. Awareness accepts being wrong as part of seeing clearly. Ego can't, so it fights. And in fighting it loses. The same loop continues. Confidence, overreach, denial, collapse, reflection, renewal. Then confidence again. It's not a market cycle. It's a human one. Every boom and bust in history is just a chart of collective emotion. When I studied tape patterns, I wasn't studying prices. I was studying human nature at scale. Every surge in volume was a shout of greed. Every sudden drop, a scream of fear. The market was a living creature, pulsing with the heartbeat of mankind's oldest desires. And the strangest part, even when people know the pattern, they still repeat it. Because knowledge doesn't change instinct. Discipline does. Discipline is memory kept alive. It's awareness made routine. It's what turns lessons into habits, and habits into wisdom. But discipline isn't glamorous. It doesn't get headlines, so every generation forgets it, and then calls their rediscovery innovation. I don't say this to judge. I say it because I was them. Every mistake they make, I made first. Every illusion they chase, I once believed. I thought I could predict behavior, but I couldn't even predict my own. The longer I traded, the more I realized that the market wasn't testing my strategy. It was testing my state of being, fear, greed, and ego. They weren't enemies to eliminate. They were signals to understand. Fear told me I was attached. Greed told me I was insecure. Ego told me I was blind. Each emotion was a messenger. And every time I ignored them, the market made sure I listened louder next time. You can't silence emotion, but you can translate it. And translation is the essence of mastery. The modern trader hides behind data. The old trader hid behind intuition. Both are disguises for the same struggle, the fear of uncertainty. But uncertainty isn't the enemy. It's the field where wisdom grows. Every decision I ever made came down to this. Could I act without needing to be right? Could I lose without losing myself? That's the true exam, not the entry, not the exit. But the equilibrium between them, patience, lives in that equilibrium, and patience is what turns volatility into opportunity. When you stop needing the market to behave, you begin to see how it truly moves. You realize that chaos isn't randomness. It's rhythm too complex for arrogance to hear. That's the beauty of markets. They're both brutal and poetic. They punish blindness but reward observation. They destroy greed but nurture discipline. And they never stop teaching. I remember one afternoon, late in my career. The markets were calm, the room quiet. A young trader approached me, eager, nervous, eyes burning with that hunger I once had. He asked, "Mr. Livermore, how do I know when I've become a good trader?" I smiled and said, "When you no longer need to prove it." He didn't understand then. Few do. But the truth is, the day you stop chasing validation is the day you start hearing the market's real language. Because the market doesn't speak in profits, it speaks in balance. Every tick, every retrace, every pause, it's a dialogue between excess and correction, between pride and humility, between noise and truth. The best traders are interpreters, not prophets. They translate chaos into comprehension. They don't force meaning. They discover it. And what they discover is universal. The market mirrors us because we built it in our image. It reflects our collective soul, our impatience, our vanity, our hope, our fear. That's why it never changes, because we don't. Technology can speed up trades, but it can't slow down emotion. Artificial intelligence can predict patterns, but it can't prevent panic. Even if machines one day trade for us, they'll still inherit our impulses, because we wrote the code. Human nature is the oldest algorithm, and until that changes, the market never will. So when people ask me what my greatest insight was after all these years, I tell them this: the real lesson of trading isn't about making money. It's about making peace with your own nature. Money is just the scorecard. Awareness is the game. When you master awareness, you no longer fear losing, because you've already won the only battle that matters. The market is just a stage. The play is always the same. The actors change, but the script remains eternal. There comes a moment in every trader's life when the charts fade, and all that remains is reflection. You stop chasing patterns and start recognizing the pattern inside yourself. You stop searching for the perfect trade and start searching for the perfect mindset. That moment isn't dramatic. It doesn't come with fireworks or headlines. It arrives quietly, like dawn slipping through the blinds after a long night. Soft, unannounced, inevitable. That's what the end of my journey felt like. Not a crash, not a triumph. Just a stillness deep enough to hold both without needing either. I used to think that wisdom meant understanding the market. Now I know it means understanding why you needed to. The market was never about stocks or points or money. It was a mirror I stood before every day, a mirror that showed me who I really was when no one was watching. It stripped away excuses, pride, and pretense until all that remained was awareness. That's the true profit, awareness. It can't be measured in dollars, but it's worth more than any fortune. The first time I made $1 million, I felt powerful. The last time I lost it, I felt nothing. Not because I was numb, but because I finally understood that neither gain nor loss defined me. The market had been trying to teach me that lesson my entire life. I just wasn't ready to listen. Every generation has to learn it the hard way. That's why the market never changes. Because it's not supposed to. It exists to remind us that we haven't. When I look at traders now, I don't see competition. I see reflection. Younger versions of myself rushing toward the same lessons I once resisted. They believe knowledge will save them. But knowledge without humility is just fuel for the next mistake. Humility is the true hedge. It protects you from yourself. That's the irony no one tells you. The greatest advantage in trading isn't intelligence, it's surrender. To surrender is not to give up. It's to give in, to stop demanding the market obey your expectations and start aligning with its rhythm instead. Because the market doesn't speak the language of force, it speaks the language of flow. I used to think silence was emptiness. Now I see it's instruction. The quieter you become, the more you hear what the market is saying. Most traders drown in noise, charts screaming, headlines flashing, opinions colliding. They confuse movement for meaning. But meaning only appears when you can sit still long enough to see beyond motion. Silence is where the pattern lives. It's there in the quiet that the market reveals its truth. Every boom carries the seed of its bust. Every crash plants the roots of the next recovery. Every win whispers a warning, and every loss hides a lesson. It's all connected, not by numbers, but by human nature. We are the market. Every trade, every price, every panic, every rally, they're all just expressions of collective emotion. And emotion, not logic, has always been the invisible hand. The market is alive because we are. It breathes our hope, our greed, our fear, our need for meaning. That's why it never dies and never evolves beyond us. If the market were to change, we'd have to change first. And that, I think, is the greatest challenge of all. I used to believe time would make us wiser, but time doesn't make anyone wiser. Reflection does. And reflection requires courage. The courage to look at your own mistakes without judgment. That's why I keep writing, not to teach, but to remember. Because memory fades, but writing keeps the truth anchored to the page. In my journals, I stopped recording prices. I started recording thoughts. What was I feeling before a loss? What was I believing before a mistake? Those patterns were worth more than any chart. I found that self-awareness compounds faster than any profit. And awareness, once earned, can't be taken by the market. Money can vanish overnight. Wisdom can't. That's why I say the market gives more than it takes. If you know what to look for, it gives you awareness, discipline, humility, and if you're lucky, peace. Peace isn't the end of trading. It's the evolution of it. When you reach that state, you no longer trade to win. You trade to express balance. You stop trying to conquer the market and start harmonizing with it. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop needing certainty and start respecting mystery. That's what mastery really means. The great secret isn't how to predict the market. It's how to predict yourself. Because once you understand your own rhythms, you understand the world's. Every trader eventually realizes that the real journey was inward all along. The numbers were just the scenery. I look back now, and I see that every failure was necessary. Every mistake was a doorway. Every loss was a mirror. And behind every mirror was another version of me, waiting to be understood. That's the real market cycle. Not bull and bear, but ignorance and awareness. Each crash tears away an illusion. Each recovery builds a deeper truth. We call it volatility, but it's really growth. Growth disguised as pain. When I say the market never changes, I mean it keeps doing what it's always done, forcing us to evolve. It doesn't punish us to be cruel. It challenges us to be conscious, and consciousness, that's the final dividend. When I walk past the exchange now, I don't hear the noise anymore. I hear rhythm, the same rhythm I heard when I was 16, the same rhythm I'll hear until the day I stop listening. It sounds like this: greed rising, fear falling, patience returning, humility learning, and through it all, the same pulse, steady, eternal, human. I smile when I hear it, because that's the music of the market. It hasn't changed in 100 years. It won't change in 100 more. And that's beautiful. Because if the market never changes, it means the lesson is always available, always waiting, always offering redemption to those who are ready to see. So when your next loss comes, and it will, don't curse it. Listen to it. Let it humble you. Let it teach you what success never could. Because every loss is an invitation, and every invitation, if accepted, brings you closer to truth. If you can reach that truth, that still, quiet understanding, then the market will no longer frighten you. It will no longer tempt you. It will no longer define you. It will simply mirror you. And in that reflection, you'll see not a trader, but a man finally at peace. That's when you'll know the journey is complete. The profits fade, the headlines fade, even the name fades. But awareness remains. That's the legacy of every generation, not wealth, not fame, but wisdom. And wisdom, like the market, never changes.